preparing for the briquette floor, which will be going down in the kitchen once this bordel has been tidied up. So let's get to work, shall we? That's enough of that. So I finally remembered, although I gave my proper breaker to the mayor back in Normandy in the town, I remembered I've got sort of a chunky drill which enables you to create like a mini breaker. So I was curious to know what this was, this chunk of brick and block that had been there previously in the kitchen. It had a small unit perched on top of it, which had the brooms and that in it. And I couldn't work out why on earth it was as it was. So I decided, seeing as I'm going to be working in the kitchen anyway, I'd have a bit of a crack and see if we can find out what it is, what lies beneath. I'm looking to lay the briquettes fairly shortly, so it's a question of doing all the preparation for this room. Be nice to get the briquettes down because they're taking up space in the other room, and it's just another thing forward. And I'll probably be laying them on the map, which is the mortar adhesive, which is a terrific material. It will kind of stick anything to anything almost. So what I'll do is I'll kind of knock it up, and I'll use a serrated trowel to almost like if you're tiling, and run it along the floor that way. It doesn't need much of it doesn't really need a bed as such. It just needs it's sufficient just to take the tile, take the brick out. So that's what I'll be doing with that. So I picked up a couple of bags of those today in the nearby town, which has got the nice independent merchants. So it's always quite nice spending money at an independent rather than at the big boys. So this bit of brick and block was quite troublesome or awkward to get at. And obviously the breaker's it's not a proper breaker, so it will only do X amount of what you'd like it to do. And also just tidying up the bit of brickwork and stuff that was originally part of the divide between the bathroom and the kitchen. So in France, it's quite usual to have bathrooms coming straight off of kitchens. They don't have the two-door rule like they do in many other countries. And I will be adopting the same thing when I make my little downstairs loo. It will come in directly from the kitchen, which may freak some people out, but I mean it's there anyway. So it will be vented. I will put a ventilation system into the downstairs loo. But yes, it will run. The door will be straight off from the kitchen into there. Right. So decided to give it a bit of welly with a big hammer, just to try and help the breaker along the way, just to put a bit of damage onto it. And that helped a wee bit, just to take off the excess bricks and stuff. And then I started to see that it was kind of surrounding like a large chunk of flint or some sort of flint concrete mix. So they'd obviously just put this bit of brickwork in when this was, I don't know the timeline exactly to when the kitchen floor and the bathroom were done. The kitchen floor is a different level to the bathroom floor for whatever reason. So I also need to take a chunk of that out as well, so that when I lay my bricks, they're all going to finish on the same level. And it means there will still be a step up, unfortunately, into the downstairs loo area, but it would be better than it was before. I don't really want to step in the kitchen between two areas. I'd like it all to be a level. And as I've now sort of tidied up the back door and taken the chunk off the bottom of that, it then means that the levels running through the downstairs will be more or less all the one. There won't be much, only be a few millimetres in it, if anything. Where you're coming in through from the main living area through to the kitchen, you'll be coming through more or less on a level, which I much prefer. I've got a sort of bugbear about levels. I don't like tiny steps. I don't like great big steps either, but tiny steps I think are a real hazard. People go sort of arse over tit over them because you don't realise it's just your step until you come across it. So I was determined that upstairs would be a level and downstairs would be a level, and that's where I'm at. Right. So, like I say, with this thing here, it's slowly revealing a huge, great sort of chunk of flint concrete, and then if you look at the position of it, it's actually directly underneath this large upright, which itself is then supporting the large beam that runs from front to rear of the property. So now I'm then, while I'm digging it out or digging around it, I'm thinking, is this some sort of foundation stone for the house? And it probably is, to be honest with you, because of just exactly where the position is and the fact that nobody's ever tried to dig it out before. Would suggest that it's a necessary part of the house. So midway through this, a lot of digging and stuff, I decided I would leave the rest as is. So I've kind of got it back to more or less where the wall on the left hand side is sort of on an angle. It sort of veers up, and the wall on the right hand side is sort of a more vertical. So what I've done is, it's not perfect, but I've kind of got it to the level of the left hand side wall, and then I'll just try and make good. It's going to be, unfortunately, it's going to be in the kitchen area, so I'll have to do something with it. I'll do something just to hide it, but I decided it was probably better not to actually take out the foundation stone of the house, just to put a bit of kitchen flooring in. So that was that. And then after that, it was a question of, I did a few calculations. I reckon I've got about 10 square meters of brick or briquettes. And when I measured it, it actually measured out to be the area around about 12 and a half square meters. And then I thought, aye, this could be a problem. But I do have somewhere in the region of about 4.5 square meters of tiles. So now I'm thinking what I might well do is use 2 tiles, like a 2-tile border going all the way around, which will obviously swallow up some of the square meterage, and then utilise the 10 square meters of brick to fill in the area. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll have just about enough, because that they were all the decent bricks that I had, and there were 1 or 2 broken ones in amongst it as well. But I can cut them down, so it's not too much of an issue. But I don't want to be at the stage where I get to the end and I've got like a metre short of these briquettes, because there'd be a bugger to try and find elsewhere if someone else has got any, and there aren't any more now in the house, in and around the house. So I need to tread carefully when I'm working on laying them out. So, like I say, if I do a border of 2 tiles running all the way around it, I'm hoping that'll be sufficient, and that'll finish off the area quite nicely. And then it will just be a question of sealing the bricks, cleaning them up and sealing them afterwards, and that should be a really beautiful, unique floor. And I will be laying them, as I have suggested before, on a 45-degree run, which is effectively herringbone or chevron, depending on what your terminology is. So as you're looking at the floor won't be running square to the house because there's not one wall in or floor in this area that is square. So the tiles in the kitchen were square for the kitchen, but then the tiles in the bathroom weren't on the same run at all. So if I do it at 45 degrees, you can hide the fact that you've not got any straight, you've not got a square edge to work to. It doesn't really matter. It's just, and also it's much, I find it aesthetically pleasing and much nicer looking floor. It's much more interesting floor than just a straightforward. Like I don't like the tiles that are down there. They're just laid in sort of court fashion. So you've got all the joints run through the joints, and I just find that really horrible. I never did that when I was paving. I always staggered the joints like you would in brickwork or whatever. I don't like straight joints like that. I'm not a big fan of tiled floors, to be honest with you. I know they're a big thing in France, but I'm not. I'm not overly keen on them. I think they're very cold and that they're unforgiving if you drop something on them. It, you kind of shatter the tile, and then you've got all the hassle of trying to get a tile or two out to replace. So I much prefer sort of timber floors and stuff. But I think the briquettes were a nice compromise because, well, they're a nice clay brick, so they shouldn't be as cold in theory as the ceramic tiles, and they look a lot nicer, and the design will be a lot better than the existing naff design of the tiles that you've got there. So it should all come together quite nice when it's all done. And obviously I'll be videoing it so that you'll be able to see the process and the progress. Right, so I'm still fanning around with this. There's like a chunk of excess flint. I thought if I could just get out, then that would get me to the level, like I say, of the left-hand side wall. But it was a real pain to try and get just this sort of the size of a fist, I suppose. Trying to get it out, it was really well wedged in there. So a bit of jiggery pokery with the breaker, with the hammer and chisel, and then I got a jemmy bar to it, and eventually we got it free. So that means that there's not as it's not as I don't think it'd be as noticeable. This little chunk of whatever it was, or so I'll call it the foundation stone, just for want of a better word. So rather than it was sort of 2 or 3 courses of brickwork they put around it, and like I said, then they had like a cupboard sitting on top of it, the broom cupboard. The fridge is going to be somewhere around about there, I'd imagine. So that might disguise it a wee bit on one bit. So anyway, this section is sort of taken care of, and then we'll get a look at sort of the aftermath of the dig, and hopefully you can see what I mean talking about a foundation stone. So you've got this sort of big chunk of whatever. It's like a mix of flint and concrete, but it's absolutely solid, and that's directly below this huge oak beam, and the oak beam itself is then supporting the large main beam that runs through the front, from the front to the rear of the property. So it's probably as well not to take any more of that away. Right, so then I thought, well, while I've got the breaker going, I'll have a go at the concrete, and lo and behold, the concrete's about 2 inches thick, about 5 centimeters thick, and then you're just straight onto soil. So, I mean, it's a clay soil anyway, so it's not budging. And obviously, there's no damp-proof course. There's no damp-proof course throughout the house. So I will just try and firm it up a wee bit. And the reason why I haven't bothered digging up the other parts of it around, the fact that that you'll have the kitchen units in that, Anyway, I'll leave you with this. Lots of people have been going on about clean up, have a sweep, have a sweep. So here's a bit of fun for you. This is me just sweeping up in the kitchen. So thanks as ever for watching. Thanks for all your kind words of support, and I'll catch you on the next video.